Alright, so before I start comparing different amp simulators, let me first lay down the rules I'm using to compare different amp simulators. So first off, what you'll be hearing is a mono track. I think a mono track will best represent what's usually used in the mix of a whole song for a guitar track. So unless otherwise noted, you'll be hearing a mono track of each simulator. Now what about the signal? The way each amp simulator will be recorded will be exactly the same using the exact same signal. I have a cable going from the guitar directly into the 11 rack guitar True Z input. I'll record a dry track. I'll then take that dry guitar, make a copy of it, and put it on another track which will have the amp simulator I'm demoing at that time. So for instance, if I'm demoing 11 RTAS, the plugin version here, I'll make a copy of this dry track, place it on the track that has the 11 plugin on it, and then I'll take the output from that and record that onto its own track. The same applies for the 11 rack. I'll just reamp the dry signal through the 11 rack and then back into its own mono track. Now when comparing each amp simulator, I'll of course first choose the head, say in this case a tread plate, and say I'm going to compare with Pod Farm. I'll also choose the tread plate. I'll then set the parameters to approximately the same setting. I'll then choose the same cabinet type as well, as long as it's available. Another thing I will do is if the default cabinet of whatever plugin I'm using is different than the default cabinet of the opposite plugin I'm using, I'll then give you a sample of each. One set of samples will use the same cabinet type. The other set of samples will use the default cabinet type of whatever that may be. For instance, in an 11 or 11 rack, the tread plate default cabinet is a 4x12 Classic 30, whereas in Pod Farm, the default cabinet is a 4x12 tread plate. So I think it's only fair for you to be able to hear samples of how the manufacturer set it as default. Then of course I'll choose the same kind of mic and make it on access or off access. There'll be no effects unless otherwise noted. I may give you a in context sample such as in the context of a mix with a full rig. I'll be sure to note that and put a description on screen. So the basics of what you'll be hearing is the same guitar playing the exact same riff, going into the exact same style of head with approximately the exact same settings and approximately the exact same cabinets, along with the same mic type and mic position. Again, no effects. I think that's the best way to truly compare the tone. Neither amp simulator will probably sound as good as it can if you were to set up full rigs with effects, EQ, and the like. But the purpose of this project is to compare the amps and the cabinets and the mics to get really a true tone and a true feeling of the quality of each amp simulator. You can always come in here, change settings, change your parameters, change cabinets, add effects, do all kinds of stuff. What I'm giving you is one sound and one mono track that amp simulator can do, and then that is compared with the exact same settings, or at least approximately the same settings, into another amp simulator. So don't think these clips represent the entirety of any amp simulator. Pretty much all amp simulators today are capable of great tones. It'll be up to you to decide which tones you prefer best, what you like best, what fits your situation the best. Now you probably all know I'm partial myself to the 11 rack. That's not just because of the sound of the 11 rack, it's the feel of the 11 rack. You cannot get the feel of plugging into a guitar amp by just plugging into any interface and loading a plug-in. It just doesn't feel exactly the same. When you plug into the 11 rack, the feel is there, the realism is there, the touch and tone are there. It's a great amp simulator, and I suggest everyone runs out and buys one. That said, pretty much any amp simulator will give you great tones, whether it's Amplitude, Pod Farm, 11 to plug in Native Instruments Guitar Rig 4, Waves GTR 3, etc., etc. And I always feel it's great to have options when you're at the mixing stage. So I think that covers the rules I'm going to adhere to when comparing each amp simulator. Remember, it'll be a mono track that will use the exact same guitar riff, using the exact same models of amps, using the exact same models of cabs, mics, and mic position. No effects, of course, unless otherwise noted. So in the next head-to-head videos, we'll actually get to the sounds, now that we're through all these boring rules.